welcome to episode 7 of Conscious Caregiver Conversations. We'll give Samantha a minute here to join us. There she is. There she is.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, good evening as well.
Yes.
I always forget that.
Yes. Evening over here in the States, morning over there in Australia. And I must say, despite being in South Florida, and I know all of my northern friends who watch this are going to think that I'm out of my mind, but it has been quite chilly here in South Florida, which the definition of chilly, I've been here for 5 years now, and I guess I've become a true Floridian because the definition of chilly here is like in the 60s, whereas, you know, my homeland, Pennsylvania, is like in the 30s and 40s, and so they all think that I'm just hilarious and ridiculous.
And the other, the other thing about that is in the US you still use Fahrenheit, and so in Celsius, degrees Celsius, which is what we use, those numbers sound incredibly extreme all the time because they're so different to the numbers that we use.
Yeah.
So I'm still getting used to what is actual, because for us, like 0 degrees Celsius is like freezing point, you know. So yeah, it's really interesting to when you say like, oh my gosh, it's 100 degrees outside. It's like, are you exaggerating? Because that's like, you know, Mercury or the sun or something. So yeah, it's really interesting. No, bud, no. I'll come and talk to you in a minute. Yeah, so that's very interesting as well.
Yeah, that is funny. And so, to be perfectly transparent and authentic, Samantha and I are showing up here feeling, well, Samantha, as you can tell, is feeling unwell, but also fatigued, depleted, and, you know, the work is never done. The work is never done. So we've both been navigating a lot of different things, and we are committed to showing up unless we're truly, you know, down for the count, in which case we will honor ourselves and not show up with good reason. But otherwise, you know, truly committed to show up, even if it's for a shorter period of time, because this is the work. And, you know, there's a lot of freedom and beauty and joy and peace and all the things on the other side of this work. But each of us is going to go through, like in my case, a year of transformation. And one of the things that I've been sharing a lot about on my own personal stories and you know, certainly in the vein of conscious caregivers, but also with regard to burnout and just people in general, is this year has been a real year, and as our mentor Echo coined earlier this year, a year of upheaval to uplevel. And so a lot of the content that I've been sharing lately has really addressed how that feels in your body, because a lot of people have been expressing having symptoms of burnout, feeling things like guilt or fear or anger or sadness or, a number of different emotions that will be brought to the surface when you start acknowledging and having an awareness around those symptoms that are very indicative of burnout. And it's going to bring up this stuff in you, like you're on one hand, which I know is something I've navigated a lot, and I know Samantha has too. You kind of have this feeling of wanting to put your foot down and being like, enough is enough. I need to put myself first. I need to do this. I need to do that. But then as you try to take that aligned action and take those steps moving forward to put yourself first, you start to have those feelings of guilt and fear arise. And it's just important to acknowledge that the things that you've been through leading up to this point and the patterns and the habits that you've developed have been developed over many years, and for most of us, many decades. And so even in the hustle, even in the putting everyone else first, even in the overgiving, even in the perfectionism, we have almost gotten used to how that feels. And it doesn't mean that it feels good, but from an emotional standpoint, we've just kind of learned, like, this is how it feels, and I'm exhausted, and this, that, and the other thing. And so when you try to make those actionable shifts to really, truly first realize your value and take care of yourself, your nervous system is going to go haywire. And it is often going to go into this fight or flight mode in terms of the anxiety that you will feel around this, the guilt and things like that I've mentioned that come up, the sweaty palms, the knots in your stomach, the palpitations, the difficulty breathing, feeling like there's an elephant sitting on your chest. Those are often all symptoms of the changes that you're making in physical form. And one of the things that I've noticed, and it's actually become kind of a signaling device for me, is that anxiety will show up in my field and it will be very present for me. I will often wake up for it, and it usually indicates that there's something that's going to happen in my day that is going to force me to set those boundaries, make my boundaries very clear, set clear expectations, require, something of somebody else that I would normally just do myself. And a perfect example is today, I woke up with this anxiety and I was like, okay, what is this going to mean for my day? Because, as I look at my calendar and I look at what I have going on and I look at, the temperature of my team, like, things are okay. And sure enough, I was actually in the operating room auditing a robotic hysterectomy, and I get this phone call that a class that is supposed to be held in 2 days needs to be moved to Zoom, and it's a recertification class, and I have people that are in jeopardy of expiration, and there's just all of these things, like, let's add another thing to the plate, right? And it was like, okay, there's the anxiety, because the expectation is going to be that one way or another, this class happens because we have staff that are relying on it for, to be able to keep an active certification and work, because many of them, if they don't have this active certification, have to be taken off the schedule. And so it was just like, there it is. Like, there's the reason for my anxiety, because, I have a employee that's on leave right now. She's hopefully going to return on Monday. But then I have another employee that's going to start leave on Wednesday for maternity leave. And so there's been a lot that has been added to my plate to help balance all of that. And then this happened. And it was like the cherry on top of the crap sundae, right? So it's just very interesting when you start to become super aware of why you feel the way you feel, how you feel, when that shows up, what that's trying to signal to you, we can take those things that we often look at like, oh, I just wish I could get rid of it, anxiety being one of them, right? And we can begin to see it as a tool. And it doesn't mean that anxiety still isn't like a horrible feeling. Like, I don't like waking up with anxiety. I still don't care for the anxiety showing up in my field, but I'm starting to have gratitude for the fact that it is my signal. It is a signaling device that something's going to come up, and just take a deep breath and know that it's going to show up for you. And, this is my way of letting you know. So.
Definitely. And I think that our bodies are incredible signals. And if we can not push those signals away, but instead lean into them with the correct support, and whether that there's so many different levels of support and different ways of support, but if we can actually lean into these different signals, then we're going to understand more and more about what's happening, what's activating within us, what's the next steps forward, how we can better manage things. It's just all of that. And I'd like to say that one of the biggest ways that we can do that is we do need to slow down. And I did do a post on this a couple of days ago, so you can check it out on my Instagram account. But yes, we work in a very busy healthcare environment and there are times, of course, net calls, trauma calls, we have to run, we have to rush, we have to do things quickly. I understand that, but removing those instances, we actually need to start slowing down and start taking our time, taking intentional time, not just taking our time, but taking intentional time in our workplace and then into our personal lives as well. Because what I found is I was getting very quick and very multitasking at work, and then that led into my own personal life, and I was just trying to do all the things, and you can't recognize those signals, you can't recognize what's going on in your body, in your mind. Sorry, Casey, no, please. You can't recognize that if you're just go. So the trick and the key is to start slowing down. And even if it's that when you leave work or before you begin work, you start putting in these little micro moments of time to be able to just realize those signals.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, that's slowing down. And certainly, I know we say it every week, but having a mentor, having somebody that can help provide the guidance, because when you are in the moment and when you're just experiencing and living through with some of these heightened emotions, it's hard to have the awareness around why certain things are showing up in your life. And one of the things that has been really valuable for my journey in working with my homeopath is that she really has helped me to key into, when I'm feeling a certain way, what does that feel like? What comes up for me in terms of, connecting why I feel the way I feel to what's going on. And also helping me tie it to experiences from my past so that I can begin to recognize and acknowledge patterns of behavior that are no longer serving me, so I can look at where I'm at, which there's no judgment in that. It just is what it is. But I can look at where I'm at and look at where I want to go and how my patterns of behavior need to shift so that I can begin that reprogramming and that rewiring. Because one of the things I've said for a long time, but it's really, the meaning is deepening for me as I've been working so closely with somebody, is you teach people how to treat you. And in that, you also have to realize that, we have these phrases that we've coined, like work-life balance. But what does that actually look like for you? Because my definition of work-life balance and Samantha's definition of work-life balance and our leader's definition of work-life balance might be two different things. I mean, we really are very passionate about the coaching work that we do. And so our work life balance really, for us to really feel happy and fulfilled, needs to include that, which requires time and energy and things like that so that we can be creative and we can do this work. But we work with a lot of people who their work life balance is work. They love what they do. They want to spend time doing it. They're okay, being involved in things that involve the hospital or healthcare outside of their normal hours. And, that really gives them life. Like they have truly, um, you know, picked a career path where it's not just a career path for them, it's a passion, right? And so, for them, work life balance might mean working 60 or 70 hours a week, but they don't view it as work, right? So it's so important that we really take the time to understand what those things mean for us and then make that clear to those around us, because we really do teach people how to treat us, but what does that even mean? What does all of that look like for you? What are your boundaries? What are your expectations? What are you willing to give to your role in the hospital versus home life or other activities that you enjoy? It's important to really understand that for yourself so that you're able to convey that to those around you.
Definitely. And I'm going to have to go because my work-life balance is also my children who are calling. One of them's calling out for me. But I'd like to say as well, and again, we talk about, like we mention this almost every week, but what we talk about is a lot and it's very deep. And it's just to remind, especially if this work is new to you or conscious caregiving is new to you, like this is a journey. And so understanding a work-life balance, understanding your boundaries, understanding or knowing how to implement different moments of intentionality and slowing down, like this is all a journey. It's not something you just hear once. And yes, it might resonate and it might be a light bulb moment come in and you're like, yes, I want to do this. I need to implement this. But it's a journey. And again, that's why we bang on about coaching and mentoring, but even also an accountability partner, even a colleague that, that can send you a couple of messages a couple of times a week just to check in and see how you're going when you're trying to implement something, because it's really hard to do just on your own. And in our lives that, however they're made up, are usually somewhat full and somewhat stimulated, because that is the world we live in, and that is the healthcare situation at the moment. So it's just to remember that it's a journey, and always give yourself a ton of grace that if there's things you really want to work on, if there's things that you think will help, don't just think you can do it magically overnight and it will all be better. Like sometimes implementing something and shifting your mindset and you're like, oh my gosh, things do change very quickly, but don't aim for that. Like this is a journey, and you're going to have days where you're not feeling well, or other things come up and you're like, I just can't do this, and that's okay too. Like I think giving ourselves a lot of grace, especially when we work in a profession that doesn't allow for a lot of grace and doesn't allow for a lot of mistakes for obvious reasons. It's really not mistakes in life, and this conscious caregiving, a big part of that is taking it as a journey, and taking it as a journey filled with loads of grace for ourselves, and then that stems out further.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I think that is a good place to leave it, because even just in 20 minutes, we have really covered a lot of ground. And so, again, just to quickly recap, just remember that, as you're becoming more and more aware and you're looking to make these conscious and intentional shifts, you are deconstructing and deprogramming and then reconstructing and rewiring a whole lot of patterns of behavior and habits that you have carried with you up until this point. And at one time, they may have served you, but now you're looking to move into a new level. And so some of those things need to be shed. But in the process, you are not only going to experience some emotional turmoil, but you're also, that's going to be reflected in the physical, and it's going to be reflected in how your central nervous system responds, because it's now feeling a little bit unsafe because this is new and this is different. So, we really just encourage you to hang in there, give yourself a lot of grace, and just know that there's nothing wrong with you. Everything that you're experiencing is completely normal. And please do feel free to reach out to us, find yourself a mentor. We would be happy to work with you. But if there's someone else you resonate with, find somebody that can help hold you through the changes, because it is hard. And when you're in it, it's nice to have somebody who's not, who's an outsider looking in and can really hold that space for you. Remember that you do teach people how to treat you. And that's one of the reasons that we make these shifts, because we realize that we're worthy and that we have value and that we deserve to live a life of grace and ease. And, but in making those changes, we have to be really clear about, what our expectations are, what our boundaries are, what we're capable of giving without overgiving, and what we're not, which is not easy and goes back to what we were just talking about, because for a lot of us, that's going to be a shift in how we show up from what we've shown up as previously. And yeah, like Samantha said, just giving yourself a lot of grace, making sure that, it is all about slowing down and being intentional. And for a lot of us, especially at the beginning of this journey, that slowing down and being intentional in and of itself is a new pattern of behavior. So maybe you just start concentrating on that. Maybe you just start with the slowing down and the being intentional, doing things like the mindful transition meditations that we've talked about in previous episodes. Like, if you're newer to this journey, maybe that is your new pattern of behavior, and you just start there, and then you can build on that foundation. So, I think that is really a good place to leave this week, especially since we're both, frankly, going through our own upheavals to Uplevel, and we're tired, but we're always happy to be here and to show up for you, because what we talk about, we really believe in. We're also doing the work ourselves, and we know the sustainable transformation that occurs when you commit to this work. And so despite, some of the exhaustion and things that we're both feeling, it means that much to us to be here for the conscious caregivers of the world, to support you and to just keep encouraging you to stick with it.
Exactly.
So, on that note, I hope you feel better, Miss Samantha. Much, much, much love to you, wrapping you in so much rose pink quartz love frequency, sending you all the healing vibes.
Thank you.
And I'll talk to you soon.
Definitely. We'll hop on soon.